A well-maintained Christmas. During the winter season, the Skarloey Railway is often cursed with bitter cold weather. Only 2 or 3 passenger trains ran per day, and the quarry was closed until spring. This, however, is ample opportunity for Rusty, Mr. Hugh, and the workmen to inspect the line. It's around this time of year when Rusty works extra hard, but sometimes he can work himself too hard, as he and Mr. Hugh found out one day.
Mr. Hugh, I'd like to see to that bad bit of line past Glennock before one of the others takes the Carols train next week. Can't be too safe.
Yes, Rusty, but your engine is long overdue for maintenance. We'd best slow down and... With a cough and a splutter, Rusty came to a depressing stop. The poor little diesel wheezed as smoke poured from his engine. Mr. Hugh eventually managed to cool him down. I knew your engine would give out at some point. You work so hard maintaining our line that you forget to look after yourself. Rusty said nothing. He felt as if he'd let the railway down. Presently, Skarloey arrived to take the works train and Rusty back to the yard. Upon arriving, Rusty was shunted into the workshop, and the thin controller addressed his engine.
Now that Rusty is out of commission, I must rely on you, my engines, to pitch in and help the workmen repair the line in time for the spring season. Skarloey and Rheneas, you are both preoccupied with the passenger service.
He turned to Sir Handel, Peter Sam, and Duncan.
You three, you will take it in turns to manage the track maintenance. Sir Handel, you will be the first on the job. Good day to you.
As the thin controller turned and walked away, Skarloey and Rheneas gave each other a look. They both knew that Sir Handel and Duncan would loathe this work. And whilst Peter Sam would surely try his hardest, even he could prove unpredictable. Sir Handel grumbled the next morning. He fetched the maintenance train from the yard and hissed and clanked.
I don't want to do this. I demand respect. It's freezing cold and I don't want to go out in the cold. I don't want to go out in the dark.
Once they reached the section that needed work, he complained about the cold endlessly. The bitter winds whispered around his funnel and frames. He was most
I
uncomfortable.
say, neither does Rusty cope. Even with a fire, I'm freezing. I, myself, find this work tedious and menial. Not to mention bitterly cold.
Well, you're here now, so just stow it.
Stow it!
Sir Handel spluttered indignantly. Presently, he forgot his gripes. As his fire was melting the frost around him, the wind died down, and he began to doze comfortably. Right then, Sir Handel, it's time we move to our next spot.
What?
Well, the track won't mend itself, you know. Sir Handel was most upset. As Mr. Hugh tried to move him, he slipped his brakes on crossly. Come on, number 3.
I shall not. I shall not answer to number 3 for its demeaning. It's either Sir Handel, Sir, or your lordship. And that means I'm right. I am the loudest person in the shot, and that of course means I'm correct. And I
Eventually, after a lot of arguing, the men got Sir Handel to move. But by the time they reached their next site, it was getting late, and they had to admit defeat. The next day was Peter Sam's turn. He worked hard and stopped wherever the workmen wanted. However, Peter Sam was lighter than Sir Handel, and even with a small load like the works train, he needed his sanding gear to help him grip the icy rails. Inconveniently, Peter Sam's sanding gear had broken. It was supposed to be fixed over the winter, but Mr. Hugh had been too busy. This meant that the workmen had to spend precious time sanding the rails as Peter Sam slipped his way to each part of the line. Again, they returned back, a little less defeated, but still very much behind schedule. The following day, Duncan boisterously left the yard and bounced his way up the line. All the rough riding meant that Mr. Hugh couldn't gauge whether the rails needed repair, or whether it was Duncan just being a nuisance. They often made unnecessary stops to look over perfectly fine rails.
I wish we all the hanging about. Plenty of places to be, people to see and things to do.
Perhaps if you rode more smoothly, number 6, we'd actually be working on the bad bit past Glennock by now. Presently, they stopped again. Duncan sizzled impatiently in the passing loop for Rheneas to come through with the passenger service. It wasn't long after the old engine went by that they received a call from up the line. Father! Number 2 is off the line just after Glennock. I'll bet my brake van it's that rough bit of line that's done it. Sure enough, at the head of the train sat Rheneas. His front 2 wheels were completely derailed, and he was hissing mournfully. Duncan now felt rather guilty. The workmen soon had Rheneas back on the rails, and used hot coal from his firebox to close the gap in the rails. Then, with the passengers back on board, Rheneas limped to the top station, while Duncan stayed behind to help the workmen.
I wish we all the hanging about.
That evening, Rheneas and Skarloey spoke to the Finn controller.
Please, sir, me and Skarloey would be delighted to take over the maintenance train for a few days. That is, if the others can manage our passenger runs.
We wouldn't want to have any problems with the careless train, or else the passengers may complain.
Ah, very well. I shall have Sir Handel and Duncan cover your duties while Peter Sam gets his sanding gear repaired.
Skarloey and Rheneas worked hard. They knew the line even better than Rusty and Mr. Hugh, and knew all the places that were in desperate need of repair. They worked long days and often into the dark, cold evenings, with only tea and biscuit breaks in between. One chilly morning, they finally received some good news. With a stutter and a groan from within the workshops, Rusty drew out, new engine fitted and all.
Ah, Rusty. We are glad to have you back.
We've all had to fill in for you whilst you were being mended.
That's most kind of you all. But where's the maintenance crew? I was rather hoping to get straight back to work.
Don't worry, Rusty. You will be. Just not with the maintenance train.
Huh? What do you mean, sir?
Skarloey and Rheneas have decided that this year you're to pull the carolers train.
I believe I speak for us all when I say we know how important your job here is. And so I believe a reward is more than in order.
Me? Carol's train?
Rusty had never felt so happy.
Thank
He
you.
smiled broadly at the 2 old engines.
Thank you so much.
That evening, he collected the carolers from the wharf, and as he passed the sheds, he saw the engines and crews preparing for their Christmas party. He felt he was a very lucky engine as he went up the valley, for he had a brand new engine and the best friends a diesel could ask for.